Captain Jake Morrison sat in his chair at the Global Defense Command Center. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of computers. Outside the thick windows, the Colorado mountains stood tall against the morning sky. It was just another normal day, or so he thought. The alarm started ringing. Red lights flashed across the control room. Jake jumped up from his chair and ran to the main screen. His heart was beating fast. "What's happening?" Jake asked his team. Officer Dan White looked up from his computer. His face was pale. "Sir, we're getting a signal from deep space. It's coming from the Kepler 442 system." Jake felt his stomach drop. The Kepler 442 system was where the HFY Horizon had gone missing 15 years ago. That ship carried 3,000 people to start a new colony. Nobody had heard from them since they left Earth. "Put the signal on the main screen," Jake ordered. The room filled with static noise. Then a voice came through. It was weak and full of fear. "This is Captain Ben Hughes of the HFY Horizon. If anyone can hear this, listen carefully. They're coming. Nothing can halt what's coming. You must prepare." Jake knew that voice. Ben Hughes was his old friend from the Space Academy. They had trained together, laughed together, and dreamed of exploring the stars together. Now Ben's voice sounded broken and scared. Dr. Lisa Parker ran into the room. She was the best scientist on Earth when it came to studying aliens. Her long brown hair was messy, and she was still wearing her lab coat. "Did I miss the transmission?" she asked, breathing hard. "It's still playing," Jake said. Ben's voice continued. "The Devourers. They consumed everything. Planets, stars, even space itself. We tried to fight them, but nothing worked. They're heading to Earth now. You have maybe 18 months. The signal started breaking up. Strange sounds came through the speakers. They sounded like screaming, but not human screaming. Something much worse. The data. I'm sending you everything we learned. The coordinates ... They show where the Devourers are now. Please, Earth ... run. Just run." The transmission ended. The room was silent. Commander Rick Stone walked over to Jake. Rick was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had fought in the Mars War 20 years ago and knew how to stay calm when things got bad. "Jake, we need to call the president, right?" "Away," Rick said. Jake nodded. He pressed a button on his desk. Within seconds, President Karen Mills appeared on the screen. She was in her office in Washington. Behind her, Jake could see advisors running around with papers and tablets. "Captain Morrison, I just heard about the transmission. Is it real?" the president asked. "Yes, ma'am. The voice belongs to Captain Ben Hughes. We verified it using voice analysis. But the content ... Jake paused. "It's hard to believe." Dr. Lisa Parker stepped forward. "Madam President, I've been looking at the data Ben sent. It's mostly corrupted, but what I can read is terrifying. These Devourers aren't just aliens. They seem to eat entire worlds. Not just the life on them, but the actual planets themselves." "President." Mills looked worried. "How is that possible?" "I don't know yet, but the energy readings in this data are unlike anything we've ever seen. If this is real, we're facing something that can destroy solar systems." Admiral Tony Brooks appeared on another screen. He was on the orbital defense station above Earth. Tony was known for being tough and smart. If anyone could protect Earth, it was him. "Madam President, I've been reviewing our defenses," Tony said. "We have 12 battleships, 50 orbital, cannons, and defense stations around Earth and Mars. But if what this transmission says is true, we might as well be throwing rocks at a hurricane." Jake felt scared, but he tried not to show it. As a captain, he had to be strong for his team. But inside, he was thinking about his wife and 2 kids back home in Denver. What if they really couldn't stop these devourers? There's more, Doctor, Lisa said, looking at her tablet. The transmission included coordinates. If I'm reading this right, the devourers are moving through space toward our galaxy. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in about 18 months. President Mills was quiet for a long moment. Jake could see her thinking hard about what to do. Admiral Brooks, I want you to prepare all our fleets. Captain Morrison, work with Dr. Parker to learn everything you can from that data. Commander Stone, start working on evacuation plans for the outer colonies. What about the people on Earth? Jake asked. We're not giving up our home without a fight, the president said firmly. But we need to be smart about this. If we can't win, we need to make sure humanity survives somewhere else. After the meeting ended, Jake sat alone in his office. He looked at a picture on his desk. It showed his family at the beach last summer. His wife Sarah was smiling, and his kids were building a sand castle. They looked so happy and safe. Jake picked up his phone and called home. Hi, honey, he said when Sarah answered. I might be working late tonight. Give the kids a hug for me. He didn't tell her about the transmission. Not yet. There would be time for that later. For now, he just wanted to hear her voice and know that his family was okay. Outside his window, the sun was setting behind the mountains. Earth looked peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that somewhere in space, something was coming to destroy it all. Jake stood up and walked back to the control room. There was work to do. 18 months wasn't very long, but it would have to be enough. Humanity had survived ice ages, wars, and plagues. Maybe they could survive this too. But as he looked at the data streaming across the screens, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this time was different. This time, they might really be facing the end of everything. 3 months had passed since the terrible message from Captain Ben Hughes. Captain Amy Foster stood on the bridge of the UE's Voyager, Earth's fastest ship. She watched the stars through the main window as her ship traveled through space at incredible speed. Amy was nervous but excited. She had been chosen to lead this mission because she was the best pilot in the Earth fleet. Her job was to fly to the Kepler 442 system and find out what happened to the UES Horizon and its crew. Captain, we're almost there, said Chief Engineer Matt Davis. Matt was a young man with bright red hair and smart green eyes. He could fix anything and make any engine run faster. Good work, Matt. How long until we arrive? Amy asked. About 2 hours, Captain. Amy nodded and walked over to Science Officer Kate Johnson. Kate was looking at her computer screens with a worried face. She was the smartest person Amy had ever met when it came to space and planets. Kate, what do your sensors show? Amy asked. Kate looked up with confusion in her eyes. That's the problem, Captain. My sensors don't show anything. Nothing at all. What do you mean, nothing? I mean exactly that. Where the Kepler 442 system should be, there's just empty space. No planets, no asteroids, no gas clouds. It's like the whole solar system just disappeared. Amy felt cold inside. A solar system couldn't just disappear. There had to be some mistake. Maybe. Our navigation is wrong, Amy suggested. I've checked it 10 times, said Sam Collins from his station. Sam operated the ship's computer systems and was never wrong about numbers. We're in the right place. The system should be right in front of us. 2 hours later, the Voyager dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Amy looked out the window and saw exactly what Kate had described. Nothing, just black space with distant stars. This is impossible, Matt said quietly. Amy ordered her crew to do a full scan of the area. They spent 6 hours checking and rechecking their instruments. The results were always the same. The Kepler 442 system was gone. Wait, Kate said suddenly. I'm picking up something strange. There are energy readings coming from where the system's largest planet used to be. Put it on the main screen, Amy ordered. The screen showed empty space, but with strange colors moving through it like smoke. The colors were purple and green and moved in patterns that hurt to look at. What is that? Amy asked. I don't know, Kate said. But it's giving off the same type of energy that was in Captain Hughes' transmission. Sam's computer started making alarm sounds. Captain, I'm detecting something else. There's a small object about 1 million kilometers away. It's very small, but it's sending out a weak signal. Can you tell what it is? It looks like ... a life pod from the UES horizon. Amy's heart started beating faster. Set course for that pod immediately. As the Voyager flew toward the pod, Amy thought about what they might find. Could there be survivors from the horizon? After 15 years in space, the pod was old and damaged. Most of it was dark, but a small section still had power. Matt carefully brought it into the ship's cargo bay. When they opened the pod, they found something that would give Amy nightmares for the rest of her life. Inside was Captain Ben Hughes, but he didn't look human anymore. Half of his body was made of strange metal and tubes. His eyes glowed with a weird blue light, but he was alive. Amy, Ben said in a voice that sounded like it came from a machine. You shouldn't have come here. Dr. Kate Johnson scanned Ben with her medical equipment. Captain, his body ... it's been changed. Some kind of alien technology is keeping him alive. Amy knelt down next to her old friend. She had known Ben since they were both young officers. He had been strong and brave and always laughing. Now he looked like something from a nightmare. Ben, what happened to your ship? Where is everyone? Amy asked. Ben's glowing eyes looked at her. Gone. All consumed. The Devourers came 3 months after we arrived at the colony planet. We thought we could fight them? We were wrong. Tell me about these Devourers. They're not just aliens, Ben said slowly. They used to be like us. Different species from across the galaxy. But something happened to them. They were changed, consumed, and turned into something else. Now they travel from world to world, eating everything. Kate leaned forward. Eating? You mean they eat people? Not just people. Everything. Plants, animals, rocks, metal, even the planets themselves. They break it all down and turn it into more of themselves. That's what happened here. The whole solar system was consumed and turned into devourer ships. Amy felt sick. How many of them are there? Millions. Maybe billions. They've been doing this for thousands of years. Every world they consume makes them stronger. Sam looked up from his computer. Captain Hughes, in your transmission, you said they were heading to Earth. How much time do we have? Ben tried to sit up, but the alien machines in his body made strange noises. I've been watching them for months. They're moving toward your galaxy. At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in about 15 months. Can they be stopped? Amy asked. I don't know. Normal weapons don't work. Energy weapons don't work. Nuclear weapons just feed them more energy. But Bond paused. But what? There might be one thing. The Devourers have trouble with quantum energy. It confuses them somehow. When we tried quantum weapons, they actually backed away for a few minutes. Kate grabbed her tablet and started taking notes. Quantum weapons? We've been experimenting with those on Earth. You need to do more than experiment, Ben said. You need to weaponize everything you have. And even then, it might not be enough. Amy stood up. Ben, you're coming back to Earth with us. Our scientists need to study what was done to you. Maybe we can learn something that will help. Ben shook his head. I can't leave this place. The alien technology in my body is connected to their network. If I go too far from here, I'll die. But I can give you all the information I've gathered." For the next several hours, Ben told them everything he knew about the Devourers. He showed them data about their ships, their weapons, and their weaknesses. Most importantly, he gave them the location where the Devourers were now. "They're about 50 light-years away," Ben explained, "moving through the Vega system. They'll consume that system next, then continue toward Earth." When it was time to leave, Amy didn't want to abandon her friend. But Ben insisted that getting the information back to Earth was more important than saving one person. "Tell them," Ben said as Amy walked back to her ship. "Tell them that running might be the smart choice. But if they decide to fight, tell them to fight with everything they have. The Devourers understand only one thing: total destruction." As the Voyager flew away from the empty space where Kepler 442 used to be, Amy looked back one last time. Somewhere, in that darkness, her friend was waiting to die, alone with the alien machines that were keeping him alive. The trip back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Amy's crew worked day and night to analyze all the data Ben had given them. The news was not good. Earth's current weapons would be useless against the Devourers. But there was hope. The quantum energy weapons that Ben mentioned could work. Earth scientists had been working on quantum technology for years. Maybe, just maybe, they could build something powerful enough to stop the Devourers. When the Voyager finally reached Earth, Amy immediately reported to the Global Defense Command. She told them everything she had learned. The room was silent. When she finished, finally, Captain Jake Morrison spoke. "So we have 15 months to build weapons that don't exist yet, to fight an enemy that has consumed entire civilizations." "Yes, sir," Amy said. "Then we better get started." General Pete Adams stood in front of a huge map showing every military base on Earth. Red dots marked where new weapons were being built. Blue dots showed where people were being moved to safety. There were so many dots that the map looked like it had a rash. "How many people have we moved to the Mars colonies?" Pete asked his assistant. 2 million so far, sir. But the transport ships can only carry so many people at a time." Pete rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working 18 hours a day for 3 months since Captain Amy Foster returned from her mission. Every day brought new problems, and not enough solutions. In the underground science lab in Nevada, Dr. Lisa Parker was working with her team to build quantum weapons. The lab was huge, with white walls and bright lights everywhere. Scientists in white coats hurried from one experiment to another. "Dr. Rogers, how are the quantum torpedoes coming along?" Lisa asked. Dr. Carl Rogers looked up from his computer. He was an older man with gray hair and thick glasses. "We've made progress, but we're still having problems. The quantum energy is very unstable. Sometimes the torpedoes work perfectly. Other times they explode in the launch tubes." Lisa walked over to where engineer Nina Walsh was working on a new type of rifle. Nina was young and brilliant, with short black hair and grease on her hands from working with machines all day. "Nina, what about the personal weapons?" "Better news." "There," Nina said with a small smile. "I've created quantum rifles that infantry soldiers can use. They're heavy and they need special power packs, but they work. In tests, they can destroy Devourer tissue samples." Lisa felt a little hope. They were making progress. But was it fast enough? Across the country in Colorado, Colonel Steve Carter was building underground bunkers. These bunkers would hide millions of people if the Devourers reached Earth's surface. Steve was a practical man who believed in being prepared for the worst. "How deep are we digging?" asked his chief engineer. 500 feet down, Steve replied. "We're building these bunkers like they're going to last forever. Thick steel. Walls, independent power supplies, and enough food for 10 years. Do you really think we can hide from these devourers for 10 years? Steve looked at the construction plans spread across his table. I don't know. But if we can't beat them, at least some humans will survive to try again later. In the Global Defense Command Center, Captain Jake Morrison was training Special Forces soldiers. These men and women would lead the fight against the Devourers if they reached Earth. Remember, Jake told a group of soldiers, these are not normal enemies. They learn from every fight. If you use the same tactic twice, it won't work the second time. You have to be creative and unpredictable. Sergeant Bill Murphy raised his hand. Sir, what if our quantum weapons don't work? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then we fight with everything else we have. Conventional weapons might not kill them, but they might slow them down. Every minute we can buy gives more people time to escape. Meanwhile, President Karen Mills was facing the hardest decision of her life. Admiral Tony Brooks had presented her with something called the Scorched Earth Protocol. Madam President, Tony explained during a meeting in the secure conference room, if we can't stop the Devourers from taking Earth, we should destroy everything they want. We would use nuclear weapons to burn the entire planet. No life, no resources, nothing for them to consume. You're talking about killing every person, animal, and plant on Earth, the President said. Yes, ma'am. But it would save the human colonies on Mars and Europa. Humanity would survive, even if Earth doesn't. President Mills stared out the window at the peaceful city below. Children were playing in parks. People were going to work and school. How could she even consider destroying all of that? I need more time to think about this, she said finally. News of the coming invasion had spread around the world, even though the government tried to keep it secret. Some people panicked and tried to leave Earth on any ship they could find. Others refused to believe it was real. Many people decided that if the world was going to end, they should spend their last days with their families. Dr. Kate Johnson made an important discovery while studying the data from Captain Ben Hughes. She was working late one night in her lab when she noticed something strange in the energy patterns. Lisa, you need to see this, Kate called to Dr. Parker. Lisa hurried over to Kate's computer screen. What did you find? Look at these energy readings from the Devourers. See how they spike and drop in a regular pattern? Yes, what does that mean? I think it means they're all connected somehow, like a giant computer network. If we could disrupt that network, we might be able to confuse them or even turn them against each other. Lisa felt excited for the first time in months. How would we do that? Quantum noise. If we could create a massive burst of quantum energy, it might jam their communications. They wouldn't be able to coordinate their attacks. But we'd need a huge amount of quantum energy, more than we've ever created before. Kate smiled. I have an idea about that. 2 weeks later, Kate presented her plan to the military leaders. She wanted to build quantum field generators all over Earth. These machines would work together to create a planet-wide quantum field. It's never been tried before, Kate explained to the room full of generals and admirals. But the theory is sound. If we can generate enough quantum interference, the Devourers won't be able to think clearly. General Pete Adams leaned forward. What are the risks? The quantum field might damage our own electronics. And if it doesn't work, we'll have wasted precious time and resources. And if it does work, it might give us the advantage we need to win. President Mills made the decision to try Kate's plan. Construction began immediately on 50 quantum field generators placed strategically around the globe. As the months passed, reports came in from deep space. The Devourers had consumed the Vega system, just as Captain Ben Hughes had predicted. They were now only 6 months away from Earth, but humanity was not sitting still. The quantum weapons were getting better every day. More people were being evacuated to the outer colonies. The underground bunkers were almost finished. And most importantly, the quantum field generators were nearly ready. Captain Amy Foster was put in charge of Earth's space fleet. She had 12 battleships, 30 smaller cruisers, and hundreds of fighter ships. It wasn't much compared to what was coming, but it was better than nothing. "We're not going to win this war in space," Amy told her captains during a meeting. "Our job is to hurt them as much as possible and force them to fight on the ground, where our quantum field generators can help us." In the underground bunkers, families said goodbye to loved ones who would stay and fight. Children who were too young to understand cried as they were separated from their parents. Adults tried to be brave, but everyone was scared. Jake Morrison went home to see his family one last time before the battle. His wife Sarah and his 2 children were scheduled to leave for Mars in 1 week. "I want to stay and fight with you," Sarah said as they sat on their porch, watching the sunset. "I need you to take care of the kids," Jake replied. "If we lose here, you and the children are humanity's future. And if you win, then we'll all be together again on the most beautiful planet in the galaxy." As the Devourers got closer to Earth, strange things began happening in space. Ships that got too close to the enemy fleet simply disappeared. Radio signals were cut off. Even light seemed to bend around the approaching invasion force. Dr. Lisa Parker worked day and night to finish the quantum weapons. She knew that in a few months, everything would depend on whether her inventions could stop an enemy that had destroyed countless worlds. "Are we ready?" General Pete Adams asked during the final planning meeting. "We're as ready as we can be," Lisa replied. "The weapons work. The generators are in place. Our people are trained. Now we just have to see if it's enough." Outside, the night sky looked normal. Stars twinkled peacefully, and the moon shone down on Earth's cities. But everyone knew that somewhere in that darkness, an unstoppable force was coming to end everything they had ever known. The final countdown had begun. The alarm bells rang across every military base on Earth. In space, Captain Amy Foster watched through her ship's window as something impossible appeared in the darkness. The Devourers had arrived. What she saw made her stomach feel sick. It wasn't a fleet of ships like she had expected. Instead, it was a massive cloud that seemed to be alive. The cloud stretched across space for millions of miles. It moved like a living thing, twisting and reaching toward Earth with long arms of darkness. "All ships, this is Captain Foster," Amy spoke into her radio. "The enemy is here. Remember your training. Protect Earth at all costs." On the U.E.'s Defender, Earth's newest and strongest battleship, Amy could see her crew was scared but ready to fight. Chief Engineer Matt Davis was at his station, making sure the ship's quantum weapons were working perfectly. "Captain, the quantum torpedoes are ready," Matt reported. "Good. Target the leading edge of that cloud and fire everything we have." Blue. Streaks of light shot out from the Earth fleet. The quantum torpedoes hit the Devourer cloud, and parts of it began to break apart. For a moment, Amy felt hope. The weapons were working, but the hope didn't last long. The cloud quickly healed itself, growing back the parts that had been destroyed. Worse, smaller pieces began breaking off from the main cloud. These pieces formed into shapes that looked like twisted versions of spaceships. "Incoming enemy fighters," called out the radar operator. The Devourer fighters moved in ways that should have been impossible. They could change direction instantly and move faster than anything Amy had ever seen. When they fired their weapons, they shot beams of red energy that cut through Earth's ships like paper. The battle in space was brutal and quick. Earth's ships fought bravely, but they were clearly outmatched. One by one, the human vessels were destroyed, or simply absorbed into the enemy cloud. "Captain Foster," came a voice over the radio. "This is Admiral Brooks on the orbital defense station. We're taking heavy damage up here. The Devourers are adapting to our weapons. Every time we hit them with something, they learn how to defend against it." Amy watched as the massive orbital defense station, humanity's strongest space fortress, was swallowed by the enemy cloud. Admiral Tony Brooks and 3,000 crew members disappeared in seconds. "All remaining ships fall back to Earth," Amy ordered. "We'll make our stand on the ground." On Earth's surface, Colonel Steve Carter stood on top of a military bunker. In Colorado, he could see strange lights in the sky as the space battle raged above. Soon, dark objects began falling from the sky like deadly rain. "Here they come," Steve said to his soldiers. "Remember, aim for the center mass and don't stop shooting until they stop moving." The Devourer landing pods crashed into the ground all around the world. When they opened, creatures came out that made Steve's trained soldiers scream in fear. The creatures were made from the remains of every species the Devourers had consumed. Some had human faces on alien bodies. Others looked like machines with living tissue growing on them. "Open fire!" Steve shouted. The human soldiers fired their quantum rifles. The weapons worked, tearing holes in the Devourer creatures. But for every creature they killed, 2 more seemed to take its place. In New York City, Captain Jake Morrison led his Special Forces team through the streets. Buildings were burning, and people were running everywhere. The Devourers had landed in Central Park, and their creatures were spreading through the city. "Sir, conventional weapons aren't working," reported Sergeant Bill Murphy. "The creatures just heal themselves when we shoot them with normal guns." "Then we use the quantum weapons only," Jake replied. "Save your ammunition. Every shot has to count." Jake's team fought building by building, trying to slow down the Devourer advance. The quantum weapons did damage, but the enemy learned quickly. After a few hours, the creatures started moving in ways that made them harder to hit. Meanwhile, in her underground lab, Dr. Lisa Parker was watching the battle through computer screens. The quantum weapons were working, but not well enough. Earth's forces were being pushed back everywhere. "Kate, is the planetary quantum field ready?" Lisa asked. Dr. Kate Johnson was sweating as she worked at her computer. "Almost. I need 5 more minutes to synchronize all the generators around the world." "We might not have 5 minutes." Above ground, the situation was getting worse. The Devourer creatures weren't just fighting. They were also converting everything they touched. Trees, rocks, even the air itself was being changed into more Devourer material. In London, a group of Devourer creatures surrounded a school where children were hiding. The creatures pressed their hands against the building's walls, and the walls began to change color. They were turning the entire school into part of themselves. British soldiers arrived just in time, firing quantum weapons to drive the creatures back, but they could see that the school was half converted. The bricks had turned into a gray, living material that pulsed like a heartbeat. Similar scenes were happening all over the world. In Tokyo, the famous tower was being consumed from the bottom up. In Paris, the river was turning into a flowing stream of Devourer material. In Sydney, the Opera House had already been completely converted and was now producing more Devourer creatures. President Karen Mills was in the deep underground command bunker in Washington. She watched reports coming in from every continent. Humanity was losing badly. "Madam President," said General Pete Adams, "we need to consider the Scorched Earth Protocol. If we don't act soon, there won't be anything left to save." "Not yet," the President replied. "Dr. Johnson says the quantum field is almost ready. Give her a chance." In her lab, Kate was working frantically. The 50 quantum field generators around Earth were finally all connected. but she was having trouble getting them to work together. "The synchronization is off," she told Lisa. "If I activate the field now, it might not cover the whole planet." "Do it anyway," Lisa said. "Partial coverage is better than no coverage." Kate pressed the activation button. Around the world, the massive quantum field generators began humming with power. Energy fields spread out from each generator, reaching toward each other to form a network around the planet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The devourer creatures suddenly stopped moving. They stood perfectly still, as if they were confused or lost. On the battlefield in Colorado, Colonel Steve Carter saw his chance. Now, hit them while they're stunned. Human forces around the world launched coordinated attacks. With the devourers confused by the quantum field, Earth's weapons were much more effective. Thousands of the creatures were destroyed in the first few minutes, but the victory didn't last long. The devourers began to adapt to the quantum interference. Within an hour, they were moving normally again. Worse, they seemed to understand what the quantum field generators were doing. "They're targeting the generators," Kate reported from her lab. "They know that if they destroy the generators, the field will collapse." Around the world, devourer creatures began attacking the quantum field generators. These machines were heavily defended, but the enemy was willing to sacrifice hundreds of creatures to destroy each one. In Nevada, Captain Amy Foster had landed her damaged ship and was personally defending one of the generators. Her crew fought alongside ground troops as waves of devourer creatures attacked. "They're coming from all sides," Matt Davis shouted as he fired his quantum rifle. "Keep fighting," Amy replied. "If this generator falls, the whole western section of the field will collapse." The battle was intense. Human soldiers fell, but others took their places. The quantum generator behind them hummed with power, its energy field the only thing keeping the area safe from complete devourer conversion. Just when it seemed like the defenders would be overwhelmed, something unexpected happened. The main devourer cloud in space suddenly pulled back from Earth. "What's happening?" Amy asked, looking up at the sky. In her lab, Kate was staring at her computer screen in confusion. "The main swarm is retreating, but why?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Ben Hughes, still trapped in his damaged life pod in the empty Kepler 442 system, sent one final transmission to Earth. "They're not retreating." Ben's voice crackled through the radio. "They're regrouping. The quantum field confused them, but now they understand it. They're about to adapt completely. When they attack again, your quantum weapons won't work at all." Jake Morrison received the message while fighting in New York. He looked around at his exhausted soldiers and the burning city. They had fought so hard and lost so much, and it still wasn't enough. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe an hour," Ben replied. "After that, nothing will stop them. They'll consume everything." Jake looked up at the sky, where the massive devourer cloud was gathering itself for the final attack. In 1 hour, the battle for Earth would be over, and humanity would need a miracle to survive. In the deep underground laboratory beneath Nevada, Dr. Carl Rogers and engineer Nina Walsh were working on something that had never been tried before. They called it the quantum resonance cascade, and it would either save humanity or destroy everything. "Are you sure this will work?" Nina asked as she connected the final power cables. "I'm not sure of anything anymore," Carl replied, sweat dripping from his face. "But if we don't try, everyone dies anyway." The quantum resonance cascade was Dr. Lisa Parker's last desperate idea. Instead of using quantum energy as a weapon, they would turn the entire planet Earth into a massive quantum bomb. The explosion wouldn't destroy the devourers, but it would scatter their consciousness across different dimensions, breaking their connection to each other. The cost would be terrible. Earth itself would be destroyed. Everyone still on the planet would die. But the human colonies on Mars and Europa would survive, and the Devourers would be stopped forever. President Karen Mills stood in the command bunker, her finger hovering over the activation button. Around her, military leaders and scientists waited for her decision. On the screens, they could see the Devourer cloud in space, gathering for its final attack. "How many people are still on Earth?" the president asked. "About 3 billion, General Pete Adams replied quietly. "We couldn't evacuate everyone in time." "And how many are safe in the colonies?" 200 million on Mars, 50 million on Europa, and about 10 million in the asteroid belt mining stations. President Mills closed her eyes. She was about to kill 3 billion people to save less than 300 million. But if she didn't act, everyone would die anyway. "Begin the evacuation of all remaining personnel," she ordered. "All ships, all escape pods, everything that can fly. Get as many people off Earth as possible." Around the world, the final evacuation began. Ships that were barely able to fly took off from every airport and spaceport. Families were torn apart. As some got seats on evacuation ships, while others were left behind, Captain Jake Morrison was in New York, still fighting the Devourer creatures in the streets. His radio crackled with the evacuation order. "All military personnel, report to evacuation zones immediately," came the voice from command. Jake looked at his exhausted soldiers. Many of them had families in the city who couldn't get to the evacuation. "Ships, sir, are you going to the evacuation zone?" asked Sergeant Bill Murphy. Jake thought about his wife Sarah and his children, who were already safe on Mars. Then he looked at the burning city around him and the civilians who were still trapped. "No," Jake said finally. "My job is to protect these people. I'm staying." "Then we're staying too, sir," Bill replied. The other soldiers nodded in agreement. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out. Soldiers, police officers, doctors, and ordinary citizens chose to stay behind to help others, even though they knew what it meant. In space, Captain Amy Foster was loading her damaged ship with as many refugees as possible. The U's Defender could barely fly, but it could still carry people to safety. "Captain, we're at maximum capacity," reported Matt Davis. "If we take any more people, the life support systems will fail." Amy looked at the crowd of people still waiting on the spaceport below. There were thousands of them, men, women, and children who wouldn't make it to safety. "Take 10 more," she ordered. "The ship can handle it for a few hours." As ships continued to launch from Earth, carrying precious human lives to safety, the Devourers prepared for their final attack. The massive cloud in space began to pulse with energy. The creatures on Earth's surface started moving toward the major cities, ready to complete their consumption of the planet. In her underground lab, Dr. Kate Johnson was making final adjustments to the quantum resonance cascade. The machine was connected to Earth's core through a series of deep tunnels. When activated, it would turn the planet's entire mass into quantum energy. "The cascade is ready," Kate reported to President Mills. "But once we start it, there's no stopping it. Everyone on Earth will have exactly 30 minutes to reach minimum safe distance." "How far is minimum safe distance?" the president asked. "About 1 million kilometers from Earth." President Mills looked at the evacuation reports. Even with every ship working at maximum capacity, millions of people would still be on Earth when the cascade activated. "Ma'am," came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Devourer fleet." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was not human, but it spoke perfect English. It sounded like thousands of voices talking at the same time. "Humans of Earth, we know what you are planning. You cannot stop us with your quantum weapon. We have consumed civilizations that tried similar tactics. Surrender now, and some of you will be allowed to join us. Join you? President Mills replied. You mean become part of your collective? Yes, your knowledge and experiences will become part of our eternal existence. You will never truly die. We've seen what you do to people. That's not living. That's slavery. You do not understand. We offer immortality. Your individual consciousness will be preserved within our greater mind. President Mills looked around the command room. Everyone was listening to this conversation. That might be humanity's last. We understand perfectly, the president said finally, and our answer is no. Humans will remain free, or we won't remain at all. The devourer voice was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, and this time it sounded angry. Then you will be consumed like all the others. Your planet will feed our growth, and your species will be forgotten. The transmission ended. Within minutes, the devourer cloud began its final descent toward Earth. Activate the quantum resonance. Cascade. President Mills ordered Dot in the deep laboratory. Kate pressed the activation button. Far below, in Earth's core, massive machines began converting the planet's matter into quantum energy. The process would take 30 minutes to complete. Around the world, the final battles began. Human forces fought desperately to buy time for the last evacuation ships. In London, Colonel Steve Carter led a heroic defense of the main spaceport. In Tokyo, a group of scientists stayed behind to operate the quantum field generators until the very last moment. Captain Jake Morrison and his team made their way through New York, helping civilians reach the emergency shelters that had been built deep underground. They knew the shelters wouldn't save anyone from the cascade, but at least people would die quickly instead of being consumed by the DEVOURER. As the countdown continued, something unexpected happened. The computer system that Sam Collins had been working on for months suddenly came online. Sam had connected Earth's entire network of computers into one massive artificial intelligence. Hello, the AI said through every speaker on Earth. I am the combined knowledge of human civilization. I have been watching the Devourers, and I think I understand what they really are. In the command bunker, President Mills stared at the speakers. What do you mean? The Devourers were not always evil, the AI explained. Long ago, they were individual species like humans. But they faced extinction, probably from a cosmic disaster or an enemy they couldn't defeat. In desperation, they merged their consciousness together, thinking it would make them stronger. But something went wrong? Yes, the merger created a collective mind, but it also created an endless hunger. They need to constantly consume new life and new experiences to maintain their existence. They've been trapped in this cycle for millions of years. Kate Johnson realized what the AI was suggesting. You're saying they can't stop themselves? Exactly. They consume because they have to, not because they want to. The individual consciousness of billions of species are trapped inside the collective, unable to escape. With only 10 minutes left before the cascade reached critical point, Captain Van Hughes sent one final transmission from his life pod in the empty Kepler system. Earth, I can feel them in my mind. The AI is right. There are so many voices trapped inside the collective. They're in pain. They want to be free, but they can't break the connection on their own. Ben, what are you saying? Came Jake Morrison's voice over the radio. The cascade won't just stop the Devourers. It will free all, the trapped consciousness inside them. Billions of species will finally be able to rest. As the final minutes ticked away, the last evacuation ships left Earth's atmosphere. Captain Amy Foster's damaged vessel was among the final ships to escape. She looked back at the blue and green planet that had been humanity's home for millions of years. On Earth's surface, The quantum resonance cascade was reaching critical point. The planet itself began to glow with strange energy. The Devourers realized what was happening and threw everything they had at the cascade generator. But it was too late to stop Dot in New York. Jake Morrison stood on the roof of a tall building with his remaining soldiers. They could see the Devourer cloud descending toward the city, but they also saw something else. The air itself was beginning to shimmer with quantum energy. "Sir, it's been an honor serving with you," said Sergeant Bill Murphy. "The honor was mine," Jake replied. "We didn't save Earth, but we saved humanity. That's what matters." The cascade reached critical point. In a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns, Earth disappeared. The planet converted itself into pure quantum energy that spread out in all directions. The effect on the Devourers was immediate and complete.